Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Understable Discourse and this week's edition of Chain Reaction, where we look back at the event that happened just this past weekend, analyze it, look at the players, look at the course, the results, and, get whatever insight we can out of it. Let's get into it. Now, this past weekend, we had ourselves the Green Mountain Championship held in Jeffersonville, Vermont. This was the first event for this year's DGPT playoffs, and man, what an event we had. When we look at the actual event itself, it went down at two different courses. It went down at Brewster Ridge and Fox Run Meadows, both part of Smuggler's Notch. Arguably, probably the best collection of courses that you're going to get anywhere, as both are in the top 10 in the world. And we saw some real drama go down on both of them. Typically, this stretch of courses plays extremely soft for the MPO field. FPO is a bit of a different story, and we saw that with the way things kind of played themselves out. The first course they played at for days 1 and 2 was Brewster Ridge, considered the easier of the two courses. FPO averaged 1.21 strokes over par, and the MPO field averaged 3.98 strokes under par. So almost 4 strokes under par. And the only real changes that we saw made to the course were a lengthening of holes 16 and 17. And a lot of these changes weren't very impactful to the FPO field. And hole 16 didn't really do much to change anything for the MPO side, other than it playing slightly harder, like a 10th and a half stroke difference in terms of difficulty. But that being said, the change on hole 17 made for an absolutely massive effect being placed onto the MPO field. So in 2024, it averaged 0.65 strokes under par. Easiest hole on the course at Brewster. I think like the third easiest between both courses. And it had a birdie rate of almost 70%. Just one of those holes where you walked up to it and you knew you absolutely 100% had to get the birdie or you were losing strokes to the field. This year, with the lengthening of the hole, it averaged 0.03 strokes over par. That's 2/3 of a stroke harder, making it the second hardest hole at Brewster Ridge and chopping the birdie rate from almost 70% down to 23%. That's a pretty drastic change, and I would argue that a lot of this was done in an effort to make these tracks harder for the MPO field, and we saw that with that particular change right there. The final two rounds were held over at Fox Run Meadows, and the FPO averaged 5.51 strokes over par. So that's a significant increase in difficulty. That's like 4.5 strokes harder than what we saw at Brewster Ridge, and the MPO averaged 3.4 strokes under par, so very slightly harder than Brewster, but not by much. Still an easy course in terms of how the MPO plays courses throughout the course of the year itself. And Fox Run just turned out to be quite a beast for the FPO field. And I wonder sometimes, this is a conversation topic that we're going to have to look at, I think, a bit more in detail during the off season. But these course changes that are made to make the course more difficult for the MPO field oftentimes come at the expense of the FPO field, as there were, some very, very difficult holes. 7 different holes averaged less than 10% birdies, and 5 of them averaged less than 5% birdies. Which is pretty crazy. And this course kind of sits in the same, in terms of overall difficulty, sits in the conversation with things like the Beast over in Nokia, the Monster in Tampere, Sprinkle Valley, which I know a lot of the FPO players are still trying to recover from, and the Ale Disc Golf Center. So this course came in as one of the hardest for the FPO field this whole season, which I would say is a bit of a sneaky one. Most people probably, if you ask them what the hardest courses on tour were for the FPO field, they would probably not include Fox Run Meadows in that list if you were just asking them off the top of their head. And that really wasn't the case, though, for the MPO field, who just continued to light up the course left, right, and center. And now changes were made to holes 7 and 8 with the hopes to increase the difficulty like we've talked about before. In 2024, they averaged together 0.26 strokes under par, and they were the 4th and 7th hardest holes on the course. And this year, they averaged 0.95 strokes over par together. That's a full stroke change between the two, and they became the 2 hardest holes. Effectively, they did make Fox Run harder with those 2 holes. So the goal was a success. The other 2 changes were for holes 11 and 12, and that really didn't make much of a difference at all. In fact, I believe last year they averaged something like 0.25 and 0.35 strokes under par, and this year they just flip-flopped. So really not much of a difference for those 2 holes. But the changes, on 7 and 8 at Fox Run and hole 17 over at Brewster, I would say massive success if the effort was to make the courses harder for the MPO field. Did it work for FPO? Do we like watching FPO rounds where most players are playing for par a lot? I don't know. That remains to be seen. Of course, I guess the better question is that closer to what we expect from a thing like golf, which is a difficult game, seeing scores down there in the 3 to 4 under range, as opposed to what we see with the MPO field in disc golf of needing to score at least double digits to even have any chance to win. Now, speaking of the actual results and the score themselves, we had quite an interesting event go down for both divisions. For the FPO field, we go into the storylines that we talked about. We're looking at the end of the year awards with Player of the Year. You got people like Holland and Missy, Silva and Owen all fighting and competing for this chance, especially with Kristen out of the field. And so when we see Missy and Owen finding themselves in an advantageous position after the first round, it's not surprising. And Evelina not too far back either. The only person that we don't really see on the leaderboard after round 1 is Holland Handley, who finds herself sitting at even par after the first round, 8 strokes back from the lead. But 4-round event, plenty of time and opportunity to find success and see how they're going to finish. Now, as we move into round 2, we see a lot of the same thing. Missy Gannon advances her lead out to 14 under par for the event with another solid round, 6 down for her. Owen Scoggins moves up into second place, and we see the jockeying of the leaderboard with Paige Pierce kind of rising up to 4 under par, but still 10 strokes back. Cadence Burge at 5 under par. And, once again, the question is, where is Holland Handley? And we find Holland down, sitting at +4, shooting a +4 second round. Even Silva Saarinen, shooting an even second round, being at 3 under par, so she's still 11 strokes back. Missy and Owen are kind of starting to separate themselves from the field, with Lisa Fakis close behind in third place. So now we move from Brewster over to Fox Run, and that definitely changes the game for the ladies, because Missy comes out and she shoots even. Owen Scoggins puts down a +4, not a round she's very proud of. And we see a 4 down come out of Paige Pierce, rocketing her up into second place, being only 6 strokes back of the lead at that point. And, Silva shoots a +3, which definitely doesn't help her argument. Holland shoots the -4, putting her even. So you now have Holland and Silva sitting at even par, 14 strokes back from the leader, knowing that they're probably not going to get it. So all eyes are really on Missy, Paige, and Owen, with Evelina kind of there. But this is Missy's event to win, because the best scores we saw come out of the FPO division for Fox Run were -4, and Paige is 6 strokes back of Missy. So it's really Missy's event to lose here. And so we get into the final round, and things get pretty dramatic. So Paige comes out and she goes out of bounds off of her drive on hole 1, but she cashes this huge C2 putt to save the par, which is something that would be very, very indicative of what we would see for the rest of the day. Missy goes out of bounds on hole 4, and now by this point the lead is cut in half, because Missy seems to be having a tough time having a good start, as she starts with 2 pars followed by 2 bogeys and doesn't see her first birdie until hole 6. But by that point, the lead has been cut in two pretty dramatically. Paige gets the big birdie on 5, but she double bogeys holes 7 and 8. 8, she took a slip in the middle of the fairway, and it just caused her to throw her disc way shorter and into the OB. Very unfortunate situation there. And over the course of the rest of the round, Missy just bleeds strokes to the field because her only birdie for the entire round would be on hole 6, and she takes a bogey on 7 and a bogey on hole 10 and just never gets past par after that. And so she slowly leaks strokes to Own, to Paige. We're kind of climbing up the leaderboard, and we find ourselves going into hole 18, where Paige is sitting at 10 under par, and both Own and Missy are sitting at 11 under par. And we get to hole 18, and Paige hangs out this hyper-aggressive shot that gets big distance, especially with a bridge skip that she gets. Missy and Own play kind of for par. They don't really have the distance showcase to get there. I mean, it looks like they can, but they don't really try to, which is interesting. They don't try to get any aggressive on the hole to sort of take each other out. They seem like they're both just okay with going into the playoff. Missy does almost cash the game winner from C2, being just a little bit short, and Paige plays the hole exceptionally well, and we get ourselves a 3-way playoff where Missy has to go first once again from hole 18. The playoff loop was going to be holes 18, 1, 4 on repeat over and over until it was resolved, and Missy goes OB off the tee, kind of putting herself out of position. Paige throws another killer tee shot. Own takes every bit of power she has and puts a great shot down, and an aggressive second shot that bounces a bit long, leaving her a very, very deep uphill putt just outside C1. And Paige just throws this beautiful shot, a little backhand turnover to the base of the basket. And so all eyes are on Owen Scoggins. Can she, the putting queen, put this in? And she leaves it just a bit short. And Paige taps it in, and she wins the Green Mountain Championship. And it's a big win for Paige. It's nice to see her come out and get the victory. We saw earlier the year with Paul getting his win, and there's just something about the long-standing names in the sport getting victories, and it's just great to watch. So big congrats to Paige and what that does for her. It is kind of fun that none of the contenders for Player of the Year got the win here, so it just helps push that narrative even further down the road. But I gotta say, impressive performances from Missy and Own for the most part. Holland Handley in 9th at 3 over par for the event. Silva tied for 9th at 3 over par. Not good looks for either of them. Really unfortunate performances on their end, especially going into MVP. I would say the two performances that I was the most I was 2 or 3 that I'm most disappointed in. Rebecca Dawn at 18 over. I think she had a real chance to do some good work for herself here, and she didn't. Then you have Cadence Burge and Valerie Mandujano finishing at 13 over par and tied for 24th spot. So not great finishes for them. As we look at the MPO side of the aisle, we get another wonderfully competitive event with a hot round coming out of Ezra Robinson in round 1 to set the pace and tone at Brewster Ridge, but Aaron Gossage, Benjamin Callaway, and Matt Bell all going double digits at 10 under par to find themselves tied for second. And I would say that based upon what we've seen this season, this is a very intriguing lead card to have Ezra Robinson, who's got 2 wins this year, but arguably some of the events he plays in, not the greatest performances. Aaron Gossage, who's been on the up and up as of late, and Ben Callaway, a winner this year, and Matt Bell, which Matt Bell's not surprising considering his putting prowess and ability to play disc golf really well in the woods. And we know that these courses bring a lot of players into contention, similar to like an Idlewild. That's why we see Greg Barsby in the top 10 after the first round. Even Eagle McMahon is up there. Jacob Blair, Cole Radalin, Bo McLaughlin, Evan Scott, Paul Kranz, all tied for positions inside of 10th place after the first round. As we go into the second round, we're expecting kind of similar performances, and we get them, but not from anyone who was on lead card the first go around. We get a 12 down from Cole Radalin. We get Paul McBeth shooting 10 under par, Paul Kranz shooting 10 under par. And you may be asking yourself, Gary, there's a name you haven't mentioned yet. Where on earth is Gannon Buhr? And Gannon finds himself after round 1 being in a really tough spot where he only shoots a 4 down. Not a great performance from Gannon Buhr in the first round. Just he had a real struggle with the beginning and the end of the round, had a decent middle, but he does come out in round 2 shooting the 10 under par to get himself closer to contention. But a lot of work would have to be done at Fox Run, but the outright lead belonging to Cole Redolin after round 2. Round 3, we head over to Fox Run Meadows, where we saw the course get a little bit harder, and you can see that looking at the leaderboard. There's lots of bogeys taken on holes 7 and 8, but another incredible round put down by the guys at the top, with Gannon Buhr taking another 10 under par, bringing himself into 4th place position, 7 strokes back from the now leader Paul McBeth, who shot a 12 down to really push himself into that position. Cole Redolin shoots the 9 down, and Paul Kranz shoots the 8 down to cap off your 4 at the top. So 7 stroke difference between Gannon and Paul, with Paul Kranz and Cole Redolin kind of shoved in the middle between the two of them, and we have ourselves the setting for possibly another Paul McBeth victory. But we all know that Gannon is going to chase, and Cole and Paul Kranz are no slouches on the course. So that's where we get to the final round, and hole 1, par for Paul McBeth. Hole 2, par for Paul McBeth. Gannon, Cole, and Paul Kranz all get birdies on 1 and 2, closing the gap. Paul gets his act together on hole 3 and just kind of has a birdie and then a par birdie, par birdie, and kind of does this bounce around game until he gets to, closer to the end of the round. Meanwhile, Gannon Buhr, kind of starting to build up a head of steam, hits hole 7, where he takes an unfortunate bogey as he slips pretty badly in the fairway, causing him to leave his 3rd shot out of bounds. And really, that hole could have very well been a birdie. That's a 2-stroke swing. It's a big difference maker for Gannon down the stretch if he has that. But, Cole's shooting pretty well. Paul Kranz has a really hot start, but kind of gets a little bit streaky in the back half of the round. And we now find ourselves with after the front 9, we've got a tie with Cole Redolin and Paul McBeth. Now, Cole ends up taking the outright lead after hole 11, and then we get a nice tie it back up on hole 12. Gannon just starts to go bananas as he birdies holes 8 through 15 to bring himself into contention. And that's where we find ourselves down the wire, going into hole 16, where things are just as tight as possible. And Paul gets the lone birdie on 16, putting significant pressure on the rest of the field as to what they're going to be able to do to be in any kind of contention, because 17 is a pretty easy hole, so easy that all 4 of them birdie it. And we now go into hole 18, and Paul is sitting in decent position at 39 under par, with Gannon at 36 and Cole at 37. So they need Paul to not play 18 very well, and they need to get that birdie. And it goes exactly as expected. Paul is a consummate professional who understands what needs to happen. And in that moment, the odds of those guys getting eagles on hole 18 just is not feasible. Paul is able to play the hole very, very carefully, get himself exactly what he needs to secure the par and take the win. Paul's 2nd win this season, win coming in the playoffs, and I believe his 2nd win ever at GMC. And I believe he says in his interview that he can do this all day. So Captain America Paul McBeth can do it all day long, and maybe we're going to see here going into MVP, can he keep this kind of streak up, and will we get ourselves a Paul McBeth US DGC major win? I mean, it feels like that's the direction we're heading right now, but there's a lot of time in disc golf to play between then. A lot of things are going on. And honestly, GMC was a fantastic event. Looking down the leaderboard, you have some pretty good finishes from the Robinson brothers at 5th and 7th place. Calvin's up there. Adam Hammis had a decent event. But when you scroll down and you see some unfortunate finishes, like Ezra Aderhold sitting in 21st place. Ricky Wysocki, who I argued this could have been his last chance to get a win this year, finishing in 28th. next to Eagle McMahon. Aaron Gossage falling off after round 1 and finishing in 31st. Simon Lizotte down in 36th. And just, not so great performances from the field. Where's Anthony Barella at right now? And what is he doing? What's going on with his game? But a lot of things to look at. It definitely shakes up where we're at in the field. We have one more event going on in the playoffs before the official cut for who makes the Tour Championship. And we have some major movement and storylines on that list. But here's the thing, folks. You're going to have to wait until Wednesday, where we look at the current leaderboard. We find out who's where, who is on the bubble, who has the best chance to make it in, who's not in right now. All that and more on Wednesday's episode. But hey, listen, that does it for this episode of Chain Reaction, where we look at the previous event that happened, kind of take our thoughts and opinions. Here's my question to you as listeners. Do you think that courses, when they're redesigned for MPO, that they should be taking FPO into consideration? Should the FPO be playing different courses? Maybe the FPO should be playing Fox Run when MPO is playing Brewster, and vice versa, so that way they can create some more uniquely designed layouts to better suit the field. What do you think? And then secondarily, do you think this win raises, in your mind, Paul McBeth's opportunities to win USDGC this year? Let me know in the comment section down below what you think about those questions. And if you like the content you saw today, make sure to leave us a like. And if you can, hit that subscribe button. It's the best way for you to support the growth of this channel. And you know what? I appreciate everyone sitting here and spending some time with me while I sit and talk about disc golf. But that's it for me. Between now and the next time I see you, make sure you go out there, you watch some disc golf if you haven't already. It's all out there on Jomez. Make sure you play some disc golf. And until then, this has been Understable Discourse and Chain Reaction.